Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sitting here with Pat Flynn of many bands. I actually want to get into that, just start there.
Yeah.
We met when you were in Have Heart. Obviously, Bridge and I put out a few releases with Have Heart.
As a teenager.
In the 2000s. I mean, we are so many years beyond that now.
Yeah.
And I mean, you started bands almost immediately after Have Heart ended, the first time.
Yeah. A lot of those projects were born during Have Heart. Just looking ahead. I had started Wolf Whistle during Have Heart, but I had other ideas of what I wanted to do.
Yeah, because you had, what, Clear, I remember?
Clear, Sweet Jesus. I like to think that if Have Heart before Have Heart broke up, artistically we were kind of at a crossroads, and it was, with songs like Paved Paradise, we were kind of inching more towards the kind of 90s, Texas is the Reason, Quicksand, Sensefield. Those were the bands that we were like really vibing with. Like Todd Jones had actually introduced, they had that song, that Betrayed song. You gotta, it's like, Bring It to Life. And I remember Todd, I was like, Todd, I remember asking you about the opening riff to Bring It to Life. I'd be like, this is an amazing riff. He's like, you gotta listen to Seaweed. And that really kind of put all of us onto that 90s kind of alt scene that was all rooted in hardcore. Not the indie scene, but bands like Texas is the Reason. Those guys are all like hardcore dudes. And kind of recognize the spirit, and it really kind of, that was like influencing a lot of us. If you listen to Paved Paradise, it's far Mother Mary meets Quicksand Shovel.
Yeah.
That was what we were really kind of really getting into. And I like to think that if we had written another record, it would have been more kind of where Fiddlehead started out. Or it would have been like harder. And I think that we were right to kind of park it there because creative. It wasn't even creative differences. I think we were just burnt out. But like, had we done that, I think it would have gone. We would have probably just ended up kind of doing what Fiddlehead sounds like. I like playing music. I started How Much Art recently, and so there was a comment like, God, how many bands are you gonna do? I'm like, what? Like, who gives a shit?
We should be so lucky. Like,
Well, yeah, not only that, but like, I'm not trying to get fucking famous. I'm trying to like be creative, and I like. It's more so for me. It's like getting together with friends and taking something where there's nothing, and then just creating something, and that's the fucking best. And like, I don't ever want to be taking up space. I can't even play that much. You know what I mean? So, but like, I have a lot of projects, and I'm happy to do them if people hit me up about it. And I can make it work. And there's been a bunch of failed things. It just got like time got in the way, and like, or maybe it didn't work. But there's a whole like Clear LP that just never see the light of day. It's a good one, but for me, it's more so meeting with somebody and being creative and having an opportunity, like a platform through music to get whatever is bothering me out. And sometimes it's not very creative. It's more like with Clear and Sweet Jesus, those were the two projects I remember at the end of Have Heart. I was like, I wanted to just, I wanted to do like what my good friend Gil Safan calls science projects in hardcore, where you're not really being super creative outside of like trying to completely Xerox a sound. So Clear was like, I just wanted to Xerox Uniform Choice and Youth of Today. And with Sweet Jesus, in the first description of Have Heart, it said like influences, and Swizz was one of the influences. And I remember the demo came out, And I remember that it was the How's Your Edge message board, and it was like, influenced by Swizz, Turning Point, Wide Awake, and Use It Today or something like that. And then the demo came out. There's no like sonic spirit to Swizz at all there. And I remember some like nameless loser on a message board be like, "So it's fucking nothing like Swizz. They don't know what Swizz is." And I was so pissed because I had heard that Swizz might have been born out of an anger of, towards, whatever stupid 80s politics there were, the TC scene. And I heard, Sean Brown was the original singer of Dag Nasty. And one piece of the origin story for Have Heart is that Ryan Hudon and I got kicked out of our band. We got a phone call that, we'd just been kicked out of our band, The Action Taken. And we were so angry, and it just put all the fuel of that anger into Have Heart. And so like, that's why Swizz was an influence for me. And like lyrically, and vocally, I love Sean Brown's rasp. So like towards the end of it, I think by the end of Have Heart, I was like, I want to do like a science project band of just ripping off Jason Farrell and Sean Brown. And I think we nailed it on the head, but like it was it was very much so fuck you to the guy who said, "Oh, I couldn't be influenced by Swizz."
Yeah.
in the first public notice of Have Heart being a band. I'm not a grudge holder, but you can piss me off.
I think you had the last word.
Yeah.
That.
And I like it. That was just a creative project, and I don't think we were just a carbon copy. We, with Sweet Jesus and Clear and that, there was just a more homage stuff. Wolf Whistle kind of just started out with Trevor Vaughn, being in X-Files X, and just my love for power violence. I loved 97A, merging Youth Crew aesthetic with like Infest, and Trevor was the power violence lord and still is. So that's where Wolf Whistle started out as. But Trevor started getting into more kind of like Electric Wizard stuff and just like weird, and I started getting into Harvey Milk, and that we ended up letting that sound just completely morph. I think my favorite record I've ever done was the Wolf Whistle record, Private Hell, or The Afternoon Blueness from a Windowsill and a Cushion, which is its proper title. Sam Triple B only put it as Private Hell, and there is a lawsuit coming his way. But I appreciate him putting it out. But the proper title is Private Hell, or The Afternoon Blueness from a Windowsill and a Cushion. Which, by the way, is a reference to Blood Meridian, or The Evening Redness in the West, which, by the way, is a reference to Moby Dick, or The Whale. Just put that out there.
That's some good inside info.
But I say all that because I like a lot of things in life, and I love it when people just create, and I like to throw that shit into music, and that's what I want to do when I'm running, when I'm in my endless hour of like my commute to work. It's just a great spot to just in my life to just put stuff there. So when I started another project, then someone was like, "Oh God, how many bands are you gonna do?" I was like, "Would you rather me do just like do drugs and like do nothing?"
I think it's incredible that you're always actively pursuing projects and creating things, because a lot of people talk about things that they want to do, the bands they want to start, and they never do it. And especially there's a lot of people that get to the level that you did with Have Heart and don't want to start over.
Yeah.
They want to keep chasing that and like doing reunions, but like you immediately just rolled up your sleeves and like continued starting brand new.
Yeah. I like it, and I like the journey too. It's not, like people in like relationships. I'm out of the dating scene. Sorry, everyone. But like, I remember encountering people who you could kind of tell like they like the beginning of relationships, and then they'd be like out once it's like, like the honeymoon phase is over. That's not what I have with bands. I like the journey. I love the friendships that come out of collaborative projects. I don't think that there's a better way to like create new friendships. It's also a dangerous way to lose friendships, so you got to walk the line. But it's a great way to kind of learn how to be a human in society. And also, like, when I was in high school, which I hated so much, I was writing like top 10 every day. I would write like top 10 hardcore bands, like my notebook, or like I'd try to write lyrics. I wrote the lyrics to Lionheart in my English class, in like my agenda. I remember I showed them to my girlfriend, who's my wife now, and she was like, "Whoa, these are awesome!" Like, I was using it in school as a way to kind of deal with like how much I hated school, but it oddly made me find like a value to education, and I've remained consistently in the classroom, with the exception of like just a few years when I was touring full time with Half Art, and I still see this like huge symbiotic situation with like teaching, learning, creating, writing. It's a really good deal, and I didn't become a teacher because of like the time off, but like it's also quite convenient in my life with vacations and various long weekends and summer break. I can tour, and I don't feel like it does, because I work full time, it does make it so that when we play, it feels like really super special and stuff like that. It might prevent any of my projects from like, making it, but I feel like I've made it. I'm a happy guy, and I like my job. I get to be creative. I feel very grateful for that. That's why I keep doing it. And there was a period where I was trying. I was like, I'm done. I'm like just done with music, and I was trying to get out of hardcore. Not in like a weird, like I'm going to bars and like clubs and shit like that. But I was like, I felt the pressure of like, well, I gotta grow up type of stuff. And it was a very, but I kept going to shows, and it stopped going to shows. I've stopped a little, like, because I had children, so it's very difficult for me to get out. But even when I stopped, I was still going to shows. I just like hardcore. It's a good scene. It's like, I'm not much of a churchgoer.
Well, there's community. I know my parents were really into church because of the community aspect of it. Yeah. And I feel like, when it comes to hardcore and punk, there is such a dynamic community that, you can go someplace and you see somebody wearing a shirt of a band that's obscure that you love, you have an instant connection.
Yeah. It's cool. I know it's like a total platitude. Like, I just like, wow, you like hardcore. But I don't know, like, it's fucking cool. Like,
hardcore is proven. I mean, like, it's been now around what, like almost 50 years? 40 something years.
There's genuine history to it.
There's history. It's a cool subculture that you don't have to grow out of. I know in the 80s, I think a lot of people felt like they had to move on. It was something that was like a phase. It was just like a moment.
Yeah, totally.
And then they like move on. And I think now, you can have that still be a strong part of your identity and still be a teacher, be, a professional, be, whatever it is you are. I mean, here I am at 50 years old, you're at 40, right? Like, I mean.
I think it's like 20, I think is what it is.
Yeah, 20.
Just kidding. No, I'm 40, everybody. I don't have my age. I think it's like, Ian said, it's not how old you are. It's, what's the minor threat line? It's not how old I am, it's how old I feel.
Yeah.
I think hardcore makes me feel young.
That's the weird thing too. And I don't even think it's exclusive to hardcore. I think it's just like when you're younger, you have this perception of people that are older. Like I remember being in college, being 18, meeting somebody that was 23 and being like, I was really into snowboarding. I was like, how do they still snowboard at 23 years old? Because you have this weird perception of, somebody that's older you being like whatever they are. And of course, I turned 23 and I was able to do whatever I wanted. I mean, I'm not going snowboarding anymore, but like at 50, I feel like, I still feel like I'm 20 something. It hurts in the morning when I wake up and like there's aches and knees and all that stuff. But like in terms of my mind, I'm still excited about things in the same way I was when I was a kid.
Yeah, the other aspect that I think is really cool is I think it's fascinating. For a minute, it was kind of confusing how much like older, like there was a period, I think right before the pandemic, where at least in Massachusetts, the general population was skewing much older, and there wasn't a large youth population. That was like super concerning to me. I was like, hey, this isn't going to live. You know, like, is this going the way of ska? You know, like, I don't know if the ska scene has come back or anything like that, at least in the vital way that it existed in the late 90s when I saw it. But I was like, you know, these things can die, and I didn't see a large youth population. And I think I put it really a lot on, you know, you've done a nice job at like retaining like the legacy of Bridge 9 and bands and Half Art. I super appreciative to see young kids still caring about it. It's like, that's so awesome.
You always need new blood,
yeah,
new people coming in.
And so I think Turnstile really completely opened the gates and then maintained this authentic element of hardcore while also, you know, doing their own thing on a much larger level to people who don't even know what hardcore is. They recently covered like Burning Fight, and I was like, that's cool. They didn't have to do that, you know, like, but I think they understand the power of the symbolism of doing such an act. But like, it seems very much more youthful now. That's so great. But the thing that's really kind of sort of fascinating to me is that, there's still a pretty present older generation too, and I guess I don't want this to sound like I'm I think it's a fascinating issue that has a negative connotation, but a fascinating question of like what it means to be older in this thing that like very much so starts out as like a youth. I see hardcore as like a youth service in a way now that I'm older, but also like, you know, Outspoken's playing in a couple hours. I'm pumped. I'm gonna mosh. I wonder if the people of, who were going to shows in the late 90s, early 2000s, I'd be interested in just in terms of like what is their commentary on what it means to kind of like actively participate at shows. Has that changed? And there's a conversation there that is, and I think that this like, you know, old man thing is kind of over with, and it's kind of like, it's actually probably good to have like elders in there. And I do think from like a sociological, anthropological viewpoint, I think cultures kind of continue and thrive when there are like elders there. Like, by that I don't mean like the elder like Lee, but yeah, even so, you know, like Ian MacKay's like, I mean, Keith Morris just turned 70.
Yeah, Vinny Stigma.
Vinny Stigma just turned, like, I think that's the sign of a healthy, if there's a strong youthful population and there are elders there, and there isn't this, because a problem that I saw growing up was there was all, like, I remember going to shows, like the older guys, like the slightly older guys were like kind of mean to the younger guys, and in some cases, like, not kind of mean, like they're actually just dickheads. And I was like, that's not good. But you kind of, there was a domination of like having a history of hardcore, where like I remember feeling compelled, like I have to know all the bands, and I treated it like I was a student. I happened to love it, but like I felt the pressure to. And then slowly things started sort of emerging, like the kind of maybe in like within the last 10 years is kind of like this like get out of here old man kind of vibe. But I think that's my presence. Like we were just talking about, like Breakdown is playing Sound and Fury, and I was like, I think that's gonna go well. First I'm like, it might not go well because it's a very youthful population. But Sound and Fury always kind of like makes me go, like, second guesses me. And I'm like, wow, I think that this is possible. And I think, and Straight Ahead just played, and I was doing the analytics. There's a lot of teenagers singing along.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel fake or lame or anything like that. So I think it's great when there are elders around, but there's also a youthful population. But also it's not just there and awkward, but seems like there's an appreciation for it. And like the older generation likes the younger stuff, and the younger people aren't being like dickheads or anything like that. And when the elders are so crucial because they can inform you on how things can really suck and things to avoid, or things to not avoid, but things to like try and like replicate. And this is how things can kind of work. And so I don't know, I think it's in a good spot. And for all of that, I think it's beyond just like hardcore is cool. I think there's a real cultural substance to it that is any sociologist or anthropologist would be really interested in that. And I think we're actually seeing mainstream culture really understand in a meaningful way. Like, this is actually a pretty legitimate thing that we've kind of always kind of turned our heads against.
Well, look at all the things from like 1982 that hasn't aged well, right? Like pop culture wise. I mean, then look at, Misfits and Minor Threat and artists that were doing stuff that were legitimately cool then and maintain like that same cool factor 40 plus years later.
Yeah. I think that the number one thing is just the willingness to like completely, they're like the best, truest like form of like punk and hardcore is like when you can just tell that the people are unconcerned with making it. That has to be, I think, for like the celebrity world, that has to be really annoying because they're like wrapped up in this, like I gotta make, or like the aspiring celebrity world. Everything's so much about like validation through popularity or followers or level of influence. And to see like kids going nuts for a virtually like not mainstream band, it has to be really annoying. Like, how do they do that?
Yeah.
Like, I remember my first, it was 1999, I went to Warped Tour, and it was like a little much. I was a big barrier. Water was $8, and then a couple weeks later, I went to my first show in New Bedford, my first like actual show, and it was in a like AA hall, and there were curtains on the windows. And I remember being like, that's weird. This doesn't look like a club. And All Chrome played that night, and the entire room, it was probably 300 to 400 people in a room not much bigger than this one. Everyone knew it, and I was like, "Who the fuck is this band? They didn't play Warped Tour." I had heard of them, but like I was like, I didn't know that many people liked them, and they know all the words. And I didn't get. I mean, Martin, the singer, just had like a button-up shirt. It was just like, hey, like there wasn't, and he was accessible. I remember he watched Gray Area play after, just like with everyone. It was just, and I remember really appreciating that because I suddenly felt no pressure to just try and be popular or to try and make it. It was in a room that was like totally devoid of like materialistic things that we give so much value to that are, they're all like weirdly not like manufactured and not organically grown. I think it's cool. I think that's why I think hardcore is cool. I think it says a lot to mainstream. It challenges a lot of popular mainstream ideas and what it means to be successful